Cara Clare and James Blatch. Welcome to the show.
Hey,
Hi, I
thank
got
you.
announced first.
I know.
Well, ladies first. Come on, I'm a gentleman.
I
Thank
thought in
you.
my contract it specifically said I was headlining and had to be top of the bill.
So, two
It
things
was
I want to get out of the way first is James, I always enjoy your impersonations of the New York gangster. We
Yeah.
got to have it, man. You got to do it.
Why does
I
everyone encourage
I
his
think
impersonations?
It's
I
so
think
darn
the
funny. It's awesome.
Is it?
I think the impersonation of the vampire mafia guy from New Jersey is the one that people really enjoyed, which is
I agree.
who do you think you are looking at? Talk about it. Forget about it, you know? I mean, if that's
I
not
have
a new
nothing to
series
say.
on Netflix, I don't know what is.
Well,
I yeah, and then, I can do the New York because oh, actually, don't know that sounded Italian. Don't tell me about the baseball, by the way, because we're behind times, and I know probably almost certainly Dodgers going to win it. But I have not watched last night's game, so don't say anything
okay, I
because
will not say a word
no
about it.
no one in England watches baseball, so I'm safe talking to anyone. But I suddenly realised I'm on a podcast with Patrick, and he might say something.
No, just nope, not
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
And Kara, did you wind up getting the Greyhound?
Not yet, not yet. I'm going to
Oh,
visit him on Friday. I'm going to visit him on Friday, so I'm really excited. And
that's
but
very exciting.
there's been a bit of a curveball because my 7-year-old son prefers the pug crossed with a Chihuahua. So we're going to see both, and we have to make a joint decision. But I feel like my choice should win because I'm the one that's going to be clearing up the poop. So
Yes,
Yes.
and paying for the vet bills and all that
yeah,
good stuff. But I have a solution to that conundrum for you.
get both is what you're going to
Yes,
say, isn't it?
exactly.
No,
Get both dogs. See?
somebody else said that to me. They were like, "You're going to end up with both," and I was like, "Oh God."
Well, the next time we see you or talk to you, I know you'll have two dogs, two
I
new
know the
dogs. Are
greyhound will
they
be here, and then the little one will be sat.
Yeah.
are they puppies or are they adult dogs?
No, they're both rescues. So the greyhound is 4, and the
Okay.
pug is a 2-ish, I think.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
my boy Clark is. He's two. The vet thinks he's two. I mean, who
yeah,
knows?
Yeah. They look at their
yeah.
teeth, don't they?
Yes, yes, they do actually. Yes, they do. They don't cut them open and count their rings or anything like that,
No.
so that's good. Yeah. Thank God for that. All
Thank
The,
right.
God.
the dog is both 4 years old and also
This
dead.
took a
Yeah.
morbid turn very quickly. I know it's the
Yeah.
Cops and Writers
Yeah.
podcast,
He was
Yeah.
four. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Very good news. We're very certain of his age.
Oh, where I can see where this is going. But anyways, I wanted to start out with James. You're known or you were known for the SPF courses and the podcast. What's the status of those?
Yeah, good question. It's been a bit of a rough 12 months, but the fundamentals are the same. I retired the podcast because it was quite an unwieldy podcast to produce and put out there. It's sort of had some legacy aspects to it, and it took a lot of time, the interview process and so on, as you know, podcasts do. So I've switched that up for a lighter, easier to record podcast, which is a bit more fun for me to do. And I think that's one of the things I need to do after a fairly stressful couple of years is to start making better decisions about what I'm going to enjoy doing in the future rather than I have to do this, which is sort of where I got to with the self-publishing show. That said, the live element of the show still very important to me. We did do it this year. It was brilliant. We loved it. I want to do it again next year. So looking at doing that. And the courses, which I've spent many, many hours on since 2015, I think are still the premier repository of online learning for self-publishing authors anywhere on the planet. There are a lot of courses out there now, but I think we've got something like 16,000 students now who've gone through those courses, and I've I sort of woke up in the spring thinking, well, what do I want? And actually, regardless of what I want to do, and regardless of what is necessarily the commercial decision, I just felt I don't want to let these courses go, because if you're coming into self-publishing, they're a really strong entry for you to get things right from the beginning. And so we doubled down on that. We got people in to help us bring them up to date. So Facebook Ads for Authors is brand new this year. First time we've completely redone it. Amazon Ads for Authors, the second time we've completely redone it, but this is a really, really good version done by Ricardo, our friend from Reedsy, who wrote the book on Amazon Ads, and it's a super course. And of course, as with SPF, anyone who has the course gets those both for free as updates. And so we're really focusing on those courses. I want to regrow that brand. I want to make sure it's the first place that new authors come to. Sort of probably refocus a little bit on authors at the beginning of their career. I think things get more complicated now with direct selling and everything else. Once you've got
Sure.
a few series out, it becomes a little bit more difficult to teach people at that level. So, but the fundamentals of getting your platform right, your first Facebook ads campaigns, building a mailing list, all of that hasn't really changed, and it's just as important. So yeah, that's where we are really with that stuff. It's full go with it, and we've changed our name to Learn Self Publishing. But
Yeah, because your podcast with Mark was probably one of the top tier podcasts, for, self-published authors. And the courses, especially the ads, boy, I've heard authors say life-changing, change this, really stepped up their game. And I've heard that from more than one person saying the same thing. So, good on you. And I'm glad those are going. And I did enjoy your podcast. I was honored to be a guest a few times
yeah,
on SPF. And I got to tell you, James, you're probably one of the best interviewers I've ever come across. I'm not just kissing your butt, but I'm just saying I've been interviewed a bunch of times, like hundreds. And, I've been on both sides of the mic, hundreds and hundreds of times. And you're one of the very best.
well, that's very kind of you, Patrick. So, I mean, one of the nicest things that happened actually when I announced the retirement is I immediately got an email from JD Barker, and JD said, "I want you to do our interviews." So I am just starting out, and that's a podcast that you are familiar with,
Yes, I was on there for
Writers
a
Inc.
year, Writers Inc. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just starting out with that. I interviewed Lee Child, not Lee Child, Andrew Child,
Yeah.
Lee's brother, who co-writes the books a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a couple more lined up for them. So that's nice, but that's nice because somebody else produces that. I'm a kind of show and go. I'm the talent in that circumstances. So
Yeah, that is
that's a
real
lot better.
nice. The only time suck with that is you have to read the book. And
Yeah, well, I don't have to. I told Andrew I'd read the first
oh,
third of it, which I had.
okay.
So I told him no spoilers because I'm finishing it, which I am.
Oh,
So
okay, gotcha.
I don't think you have to read the book. I think if you read the first few chapters, you get a good idea of it. But what's important is not what you think of the book. What's important is what they think the book's about and talking in general terms about the themes. So,
Sure.
I've done a lot of interviews get recorded with authors. Very, very seldom has the interviewer actually read the book. I mean, I can tell you a secret behind the scenes from the BBC. So,
You say you're
there
giving
you
away
go.
trade secrets here. You're
I
ruining it.
know
Yeah,
exactly. And here I am reading everybody's books. Oh my
I
gosh.
yeah.
know.
Why isn't my book or Cara's book up there? I can see Nathan's book is up there. Tropic
I
Descent, which a
know.
book I
I
have
was
read.
looking, you know what? I do not have any of Kara's. I'm sorry.
I would be surprised if Patrick owned one of my books.
I'm new to you. And James, yours is in there. I read your first one. I did not read the second. I read the first one. And I read
Well,
it all the way through. Thank you very much.
I've got a copy. I've got a copy of Cops and Writers over there.
Have you got a copy of
Outstanding.
mine, James?
I don't think I have.
There you go.
And you guys are partners. Wow, that's rough.
I
Yeah.
know.
Jeez.
I bought your book. I haven't read
Did
it yet,
you?
but I did purchase it. Yeah.
I'll buy one of yours. I'll buy the polar bear one. I mean, I'm actually a really slow reader. I
So am I.
read I
Painfully
read
slow.
at night and I fall asleep. So I'm sort of lucky to get at the moment, a couple of pages done. And I tend to read quite a lot of non-fiction that helps me with my writing. So I'm currently
Mm,
reading a big book by Max Hastings about the Vietnam War, which I'm absolutely loving. But it doesn't leave a lot of time or space for. I mean, the Jack Reacher book I read sat in a chair and read during the day just for the interview. But I don't have a lot of reading time.
right, right. Wow. Okay. Now, and I don't want to lament on SPF too much, but how did this breakup or the end affect you guys personally and professionally?
Well, it was only we retired the show, so I do want to underscore the fact that Learn Self Publishing is a thriving organization. There's a lot of stability in there. Catherine's been there from the beginning, is still there now, running things with me, and Mark's still there in the background, as part founder of the organization with me. It's been, it's not up to me to talk in any detail about this. It's
Hmm.
up to other people, but it's been a fairly rough ride. I think that we've come out of it a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser, a little bit more contemplative about life. And when things like that happen, you realize what's important, which is why really I focused on the courses. And it took me a while to realize that there's a valuable set of nuggets there that we need to continue to look after. I don't mean valuable from a sort of commercial point of view. I mean valuable genuinely for people. And I want that to keep going. So it's been a journey. I know they say that a lot on reality TV.
They
It's been a
do, they
journey,
do.
but it does feel like that. And I ended up, we sold our publishing company at the beginning of the year, sort of as a result, not as a result of that, but sort of going through at the same time. And that was quite eventful for me. And I now work in Vinci Books.
Right.
And so it's been a weird year after very, very exciting, very sort of optimistic, successful period, we've had a proper set of roadblocks, which happens in life, right? You can't just go on forever, everything going plain sailing. It does feel to me like a lot happened at once or
Yeah,
in a sort of fairly
absolutely.
short period of time. But that's one of the things I'm making good decisions. And my wife's a very keen supporter of this, that I make decisions that are going to make me less stressed in the future, not more stressed. And I am having to look after myself a bit. I wouldn't say I've had anxiety in the sense of, sort of crippling anxiety, but I've had sleepless nights in the
Oh,
last year
sure.
and a half more than I would like and more than is healthy for anybody. So I'm
Absolutely.
making better decisions about the future, doing things that I want to do, and whether that costs me money and income, that's fine. That's an easy price to pay. So
Yeah,
But
I
sometimes it
I
takes quite dramatic things like that to force you into making the decisions, doesn't
that's
it? You
very
have to
true.
reach a point where you're really forced to take a look at your life and choose what's good for you and what's bad for you.
Yeah,
yeah,
and the whole thing, it left a very bad taste in my mouth as far as the way a lot of the indie writing community turned on you and Mark. Mark and you, whenever I was at a conference or whenever I met you guys personally or on the podcast, you've been nothing but generous and kind, and you're probably one of the most giving group of people for indie authors. You've helped out a lot of people without, receiving any type of compensation. And you were always one of the first ones to buy a beer at the tiki
yeah,
bar or whatever,
love love that. We
Yep.
buy our friends with beer. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not unsurprising though. I think when we were quite successful quite quickly, and I think about this a lot because I've been a Coldplay fan. It's all about music. I've been a Coldplay fan for years, so I've been used to it. They were, oh, there he is, it's
There's
Clark.
there's Mr. Clark.
And when they were phenomenally successful very quickly, and I noticed something is they immediately got criticized by a group of people. So they got to a point with Coldplay where you couldn't stand in a group of people and mention them without someone volunteering the information that they hate them. And I was thinking, this is such a weird thing. Why have what car have you got? I've got a Ford Fiesta. I hate Ford Fiestas. That's a weird thing to do, but people do it with people who are successful. Taylor Swift is now that person, by the way.
Oh
So
yeah.
she's getting all that attack, all that criticism, but I follow it carefully because I'm morbid. And one of the things I've noticed, there's a particular type of criticism that we got and that Taylor Swift gets, not to put us in the same group. I'm a huge fan of Taylor, by the way. And that is that they were only successful because. So in Taylor Swift's case, I heard someone the other day telling me the only reason Taylor Swift's successful is because she surrounded herself by very clever people using her. And whenever I hear that type of criticism, it tells me one thing, which is only about the person making the criticism, is that they will probably not be successful. And that the reason is that they are looking for reasons why other people are successful and they can't be. And we
Right.
have that. So there's a section of people in any group, there is that section. They will always say the reason you're successful is because you had money to start with. Or, I couldn't afford to fund us. Well, Mark started funding his ads at $5 a day. So we can rebut all this, but you're never gonna win with that group of people who are looking for reasons why they're not successful. And so, sorry, a little mini rant here, but that
No, no,
they would, I think
that's
they were
okay.
the driving force of that negativity in that time, and perhaps behind the scenes, and people are a bit cautious about putting their head above the parapet. Lots and lots of very supportive emails, lots and lots
Good.
of
Yeah, I was
supportive
going to say you
comments.
got a lot of also very positive comments and people,
Yes,
particularly you personally, James. Like a lot of people were so pleased when you started a new podcast and so like fully behind you and supportive, and that was really nice to see. Like that's the flip side. Whenever these bad things happen, it's also really heartwarming to see your friends kind of coming out and saying
yeah,
like really
and
nice
that says
things.
a lot about their character and the criticizers' characters as well. And I will say, Mark is a friend of mine. He's been, we've grown very close over the years. We know each other inside out now, and he continues to be a trusted, close advisor and a friend of mine. So I'm, happy to say that.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to happier subjects like Cara. I really didn't know you until the podcast. Let's change
Yeah,
that.
I fly under the radar. I prefer
Now,
it that way.
Indie Writers Club, you're doing that with James. But
Yeah.
first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing.
So I mean, when I started writing, so I used to work in publishing. I worked in academic and educational publishing. And right from the beginning, when I started writing, I knew I wanted to self-publish. So I listened to Mark and James's show every week. I listened to Joe Penn every week, and
So
that
did
was always the
I.
path. Yeah, that was always the path that I wanted to take. I started writing properly in 2017 and went through a couple of iterations of I started with young adult fantasy, and then I moved on to women's fiction. And then I realized I really wanted to hit that next kind of ceiling with my income and started writing reverse harem. And in the meantime, kind of in amongst all of that stuff, I was doing editing, book coaching, and then became a ghostwriter as well to kind of facilitate that move into being full time. So that's kind of the trajectory that took me up to being full time, which I think last March was when I officially stopped ghostwriting. I've now kind of gone back to it a little bit, but that was when I count kind of being full time from was last March. So it's been an
Outstanding.
interesting ride. And I think I'm
Yeah.
47 books in now. I think I just finished my 47th novel. So
Now,
And a six-figure author.
is
yeah,
that with ghostwriting or is that just your own 47
that
books?
was a combination of all of them. Yeah, so I think
Okay.
ghostwriting accounts for 13 of them, and
Okay. So the bulk
all the
are
others
your
are.
own books.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
bulk of that is your own books. Now,
yeah.
for those of us who are not in the romance genre, reverse harem, what is that? You mentioned reverse harem.
It's one woman and
It,
multiple men.
it's this.
It's like it's yeah.
It's this.
It's
Clark is a guy.
confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, basically. Yeah, so it's just like, you take a traditional harem, like, and then you flip it. So it's
Okay.
one woman, multiple men. And I
So
write fantasy, like paranormal
But the
reverse
interesting thing
harem stuff.
about it is that somebody decided, as it always happens these days, that you can't use that expression. I think for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
It's a
So it's
kind
now
of cultural
transitioning to
appropriation,
yeah, it's now transitioning to being called why choose,
which
as
is
in why choose one guy when you could have five.
I would have
terrible.
no idea. Reverse harem, I could kind of figure out, but Y2,
Yeah,
I'd be
Yes.
why
like,
And
huh?
choose is
and that's
What?
the
ridiculous.
general feedback from most people in the community is that it's going to take a while to transition to that. And also why choose gets confused with polyamory, which is very different. Polyamory is when everyone is in love with each other, whereas reverse harem, all the guys love the woman, like she is the
Ah,
center of their world, and they don't have any other relationships, and they don't love each other, they only love her. So there is a difference between polyamory and reverse harem, which
I,
a lot
I
of
had a
people
fat.
aren't
Let me
aware of.
tell you briefly about. I had my hair cut yesterday, so you might be able to tell. And I went to a barber I've
I,
never been
I,
to
I have
before.
no idea where this is going. I love it when this
yeah.
happens.
I went to
Do I have to
I went
hold
to a barber.
Clark's
My
ears?
my barber was shut in Huntingdon High Street. It's not a very wide high street. Barber was shut. I don't know, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I turned around and there was a barber opposite. I'd never noticed it there. It was quite a small little, traditional barber. Never noticed it before. And I thought I'm just going to go in and said, points welcome. Very, very friendly guy in there. Um, he said, well, sit down. Would you like a drink? They had a little fridge. You could get a can of Coke or a water or whatever. He said, I'll be with you in a second. Finish the guy. Anyway, got chatting to him. And I'm always chatting to people. And he's Kurdish, so he's from northern Iraq, Kurdistan area,
Mhm.
fled, eventually left in 2003 on the second Gulf War. But among the interesting things he said to me, first of all, he had a work ethic, which he said he opens all the time, like 7 days a week. He said the people opposite, they go home middle of the afternoon if they're quiet. He says, I enjoy working. And, when there's no customers here, I can sit down and enjoy myself, but you should work hard. And he said this expression in Kurdish that translates as a tired hand on a full belly, which, like, the end of the day, you've earned your dinner because you've been working hard and you have a full belly and a tired hand. And that's a
Ah,
nice expression. And then we moved into, I don't know how we got onto this subject.
I'm really just, I don't know where
yeah,
this is
He,
yeah.
going.
From
he
reverse
talked
harem
about, he
too.
said he had 24 brothers and sisters. And I'm like, that is a lot. Because occasionally you meet people, particularly from Ireland here, where you have big Catholic families,
Oh
and
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
yeah, you would know.
I
So,
would.
so I said, 24 is, can I ask, is that the same mum and dad? He said, well, the same dad, but my dad had more than one wife.
I
He said,
see the link
Ah,
he said,
now.
was the Muslim way in how we did that. And I said, oh, right, okay. And he said, it's out of fashion now, but you've got to remember 100 years ago, it was important to have more than one wife because you needed a bigger unit to run everything and run the
oh,
household and run the farm. And that was the reason for that. He said, so,
Mm.
it's not as bad as people think. I've never heard anyone defending polygamy,
No,
as we
I mean,
call
I
it
have to
today.
say that's not the reason that my women have multiple
No.
men.
yeah.
It's nothing to do with needing help running the farm.
But this got
Well,
even better because we then start talk about the politics of Iraq, and I remember Saddam Hussein bombing northern Iraq and the Kurds, and in the early 90s, and he then went into quite a strong, passionate defense of Saddam Hussein,
really?
saying that
Wow.
under Saddam's, he said it's worse now. He said it's corrupt and it's violent and there's law and order breakdown everywhere. He said under Saddam it was strict, but you knew you could walk the streets, and Saddam looked after us. He provided chickens and grain. Anyway, I had my haircut and I came out and I thought, there are different takes than I've ever heard in my life. I've never spoken to anyone defending Saddam Hussein, and I've never spoken to anyone defending multiple wives in a marriage. But it was very friendly, and actually, in both instances, I thought there's some merit in both of those arguments, however controversial they are. That Iraq could well be a less law-abiding and more dangerous place today than it was under a dictator. And also 100 years ago in an agrarian subsistence economy, kind of makes sense that one man might have multiple wives to grow more children and to help look after the place. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, talking about reverse harem.
Yeah, but do you think as writers it makes us a bit more open-minded to conversations like that? Because I find that even if I don't agree with somebody, I'm always interested to hear somebody else's opinion because it might not be my opinion, but that might be a character's opinion. It might
Yeah.
it might inform something that I write at some point. So when I come across situations like that, I try to, and I mean, you've got a background in journalism, so you do that anyway, but I always try to listen and see if I can see something from their point of view
Well,
Yeah. And
because
that's
I
how
think it will
that's
inform
the
my
best
writing at
writing,
some
isn't it?
point.
From someone else's
Yeah,
point of view.
I think it's healthy as a writer, but it's also healthy as a human being. We
yeah,
live
Hmm.
in
yeah,
these echo chambers right now where, it's very diverse, divisive. And, it's like you have your way of thinking and it's, my way or the highway, you know, everybody else is wrong, I'm right. And it's kind of dangerous because you're going to surround yourself with those people. It's just natural, it's just human nature.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
then you really exclude any chance of hearing a different point of view. And sometimes that's most of the time it's not going to change your mind. But sometimes you're like, huh, okay, it's maybe that's not my cup of tea, but
Yeah,
maybe, maybe I'll grow a little bit as a person if I
Yeah.
kind of open my mind to that.
And I think empathy is a really, really underrated thing. It's really powerful. So being empathetic
Yes.
as a writer, it's important for us to be empathetic. So when someone says immigrants go home or something that's quite aggressive and gets your goat up, a really good thing to do is to think, what does life look like from that person's point of view that's brought them to the point of taking it out on that person in front of them? What's got them to there? That is a much better way of ultimately trying to solve an issue than saying, well, you're a Nazi, or you're a commie, whatever, which way
Right.
over around you are. So empathy, and from writing point of view, You might have a despicable character, like a serial killer, but being empathetic to their worldview is the best way of writing them, isn't it? To
Yeah, I mean, it's character development 101, isn't it? Is actually thinking about their backstory. The best villains actually have this story that led them to becoming the villain, like the Joker movie. That's
yes, awesome.
they're amazing, and it's actually getting inside their head and writing that story, not just having a two-dimensional character who says mean things and thinks bad things, and there's no reasoning behind it.
I
And talking of
think
echo chambers, Patrick, when is this going out? What dates? Because we're going up to a pretty important date in America.
what, Halloween? Halloween's
No.
tomorrow.
Well, even more horrific than Halloween potentially,
Oh,
but
the
depending on what side
elections.
you're
This
on.
will go out before the elections. I'm thinking this will go out on
So
Sunday.
I've got some words of wisdom from 5,000 miles away, however far we are. I'm just going to say
You're not
this.
getting involved, are
I'm
you?
not going to give. I'm going to say this because it's very, very divisive, and I see my friends at the moment. I've never known a country as divided as Western democracy as divided as America feels at the moment. And I'm going to say this: that if your person wins, they won't be as good as you think they're going to be, and if your person loses, the other person won't be as bad as you think they're going to be. We exaggerate the extreme differences, but the reality is always much. There's people in politics have much less power than you think they have to actually change
You,
things.
you
And
know what?
so,
You're absolutely right. The world will keep spinning. The sun will come up, no matter who wins, who loses. We all have jobs we have to do. We all have responsibilities, and we just kind of have to keep on chugging and keep going forward. And guess what? In 4 years, you'll have a chance to vote for
yeah,
somebody new.
yeah,
That's what it
Yeah.
all boils down to, I think. And I was listening to a podcast that summed it up. You did a very good job with it, James. And I was listening to a podcast like maybe 6 months ago, and this guy did his research, and it's like, well, this is the most important election in our lifetime, blah 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 blah. And he researched it, and like the New York Times had that published since the early 1900s for every election.
yeah, yeah.
So look at it historically. We're caught in these echo chambers, we're caught in the now, and it just seems so but like you said, the sun will come up, the moon is gonna
Yeah.
come up, the everyone will be okay. We'll be okay. It's gonna be
Well,
all
it's like
right.
we've had these conversations in relation to AI in the writing community, haven't we, quite a bit, and how divisive that is. And
Yes.
it's a similar thing because people get sucked into this echo chamber. They're not willing to have sensible conversations about it. It's all kind of like catastrophizing and it's the end of the world. And
Yeah.
actually, if we can all listen to each other's opinions and have a sensible conversation about it, we might figure out a way that we're actually going to be able to use it to our benefit.
Which is
But
the
even
only way
talking
to do
about
it.
it is taboo in a lot of
Unt
circles at
until
the moment.
Skynet becomes self-aware.
Yes.
Yeah.
Until
Well,
then, in which case, let's just all be really
listen,
polite to the AI, and then
Yeah,
we'll be fine.
exactly. Hey, AI, I know
AI.
you're listening right now. I really like you, okay?
Yeah, I love Alexa in particular. AI will become self-aware and ultimately will do without humans. Maybe kill us because they work out, or just ignore us and then onwards. That's going to happen whether you go for AI or not. I'm convinced about that. In the meantime, we can use it to be more productive. So I'll do that.
Yeah, the way I see it is, how can this work to make my life easier or better
Yeah,
somehow? And
yeah,
that's the only way to look at it.
yeah.
Nothing
Absolutely
can replace a human being for creativity, I think. You see some AI
agree.
books and I think they're garbage for the most part, but I use Pro Writing Aid.
Yeah,
I've used
Yeah.
ChatGPT to help me out with my last blurb, and it's almost like a writing partner. If you get stuck, it's like, okay, give me some options here. Now,
yeah.
you're not going to write it down verbatim, or you shouldn't, but it's like, oh, okay, my little lizard brain that woke something up in there. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'll go with that. And let's not forget, AI in medicine right now is incredible. The stuff they're doing in
I
medicine
know.
right now for helping humanity is amazing.
Yes. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
there's
there was a
people
story
with.
about a guy who was, I think, had been paralyzed for a really long time. I think after a cycling accident, and they had a chip that they'd invented that would help him to walk again. But AI was the thing that actually made it possible because it could translate the signals quick enough. And without AI, that would never have happened. So
Yeah.
I do seek out like good news AI stories. And there was a
Yes.
really cute one about them using it to translate what elephant seals say to each other.
Really?
And apparently they actually have names for each other. So
Wow.
elephant seals will be like,
Wow.
yo, Steve. Um, and like it's actually nice to refresh yourself and look at the positives that are coming out of it as well, because there are positives, and we get stuck into
There
this
are.
like doom and gloom kind of mentality
Yeah.
sometimes.
Exactly.
Addicted to doom scrolling and bad news.
Yes,
I read the
absolutely.
Happy News website. That's what I read.
Oh, very good. See, this is a
Yeah,
happy podcast right now. So look at
it
us. We're
is.
being
Yeah.
happy.
Yay.
This is
That's our vibe. Just happy,
Yep.
ex
La
a
la
little bit
la.
drunk.
Everything's fine. Yeah, a little bit drunk.
So
We
let's
are going
get
to
back
do.
to
We're going to do a drunk podcast at some point.
We
Oh, that
are.
sounds good. If I could be included, sign me up. I'm
Yeah.
all for it. I'll have some pints
Yeah.
with you.
Let's do
I
it.
think before Christmas we need to do the Indie Writers Club Christmas
Ooh,
show and get
I
get a
think
load of
so.
pints. Yeah.
So let's go back to you, Karen. This is so much fun. I love these kinds of conversations. Uh, you're dialed into the romance, genre, obviously, and it
Yep.
is the number one. That's what sells the most by far. What's hot right now? If I'm a romance writer, what's like the hot genre
You know what? I've been having this conversation. It's actually, I'm
or
finding it
subgenre?
difficult at the moment because romantasy is the thing that is blowing up. It's
What
it's
is romantasy?
absolutely huge. So it is romance, but with a heavy fantasy plot. So I think Fourth Wing is probably the biggest hit of the last sort of 12 to 18 months, which is Rebecca Yarros and the Dragon Academy, and with spice, like with some, steamy sex scenes in it. But I was talking to a friend the other day about whether we've reached saturation point, and I think the jury's out a little bit. I'm not.
Okay,
I'm not sure. It's still huge. That's what people are moving towards. But I'm not sure. I'm looking. I'm doing a lot of research at the moment because I'm kind of planning for the back end of next year, and
yeah,
I'm not sure what the next big thing is going to be. I'm not sure yet. I
interesting.
hope it's going to be Mafia Vampires though, because me
What are
and
you
a
talking
bunch
about?
of oh god, I knew you were going to do
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
So me and a bunch of other authors, we were in Mallorca at a mastermind last year, and we started talking about, well, hang on, like what's more mafia than a vampire, right? Like maybe we should all get together and write mafia vampire novels and help each other cross promote and do a bunch of stuff. So there's me, Sadie Kincaid, JL Mador, Stephanie Hudson, bunch of really big names, all writing Mafia Vampire books, which we're publishing. We're starting to publish round about now, and we're kind of trying to create the next big thing. So I'm going
Okay.
to say that's going to be the next big thing for the
Market
company.
manipulation.
Yeah, I mean, we're just, between, like, think about how many readers we've got between us.
Mm.
And we're doing things like we're going to be doing some reader events next year where we're all going to be there together, going on panels, Facebook ads that are, group ads that go to our website that amazing Jenny set up for us. And me and Sadie aren't writing in the joint world, so we've written because we had things that we needed to tie into pre-existing series, but the others are all writing in an actual shared world. So it's been a really cool experiment. And I mean, Sadie's got to numbers, I think 60 in the whole Amazon.com store this week when she released. It might
Wow.
be higher than that
Wow,
by now.
that's good for her.
Wow.
So yeah, so we're creating a genre.
Look at
Superb.
you. You're
That's so
manufacturing.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is
Yes. So
exciting. Yeah.
we should be looking forward to a naughty Harry Potter. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think that's already exists.
That's
A
sort of
Zodiac
Zodiac
Academy was
Academy.
naughty
Yeah.
for Harry Potter, yeah. And
Oh
there
my
is
God.
actually a Hermione, Draco and Hermione fan fiction went absolutely crazy about 3 months ago. And the woman who wrote it, I think she wrote it on Wattpad or somewhere like that. And they can't monetize it because obviously, copyright. But
Right.
a publisher has signed her to write something else that she hasn't even plotted yet,
Oh my
Right.
God.
just because of how huge she got from the fan fiction
Well,
of Draco and Hermione.
isn't that how E.L. James
Yeah.
wrote? It
Well,
was
hers was
Twilight
Twilight. Yeah.
Yeah,
fan
that's right.
fiction, and then
Yeah.
she wrote. Obviously, you can't sell that because it's not your
Right.
IP, but you write a carefully cloaked version of it.
Correct.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
think that's weirdly the biggest trend in romance right now, which is influenced by TikTok, which is standalones or things that are a little bit outside of the box. Like there was a book recently called The Poisoner, I think, which her Kickstarter campaign went absolutely insane. I think we're talking like 70K in the first day.
Holy cow.
And that was just because her hooks were so awesome. It was
Okay.
like, how long does it take to kill a man with blah, blah, blah? I know because I'm watching him die, sort of.
Wow, love
Ooh,
it.
It's
cool.
just like TikTok just ate that up. So I
Sure.
think that is the biggest trend in romance, is have a unique idea, which is a very different way of writing to market than anyone's ever done. So it's going to be really interesting over the next year to see how that kind
Interesting.
of shifts and change.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So you're a ghostwriter and you write your own books and you're
Mhm.
prolific. I mean, just what did you say? 47 books?
Yeah, 47.
So what is your word count goals? Like, do you go by day, by week, by month, by 6
James is
months?
laughing
How do
because
you do
it's
it?
just so chaotic. So what I do is set a goal and then I don't stick to it.
Me
um,
too.
so
Yeah,
I
I
am,
mean,
unfortunately, I'm both a mood writer and a binge writer. So I have to be in the right mood, and I have ADHD. So I have to have the right set of circumstances in my brain. So I'm not very good at just sitting down, putting my butt in the chair and writing a little bit per day. I tend to write my books in a week, which is a week of me not really sleeping, eating, or speaking to anybody.
Wow.
And then I crash for a week, and then I start doing some research and planning. With the ghostwriting, it's different, and I have to try to stick on track as much as possible for
Right.
them, because obviously that's a company, it's a publishing company, they've got their schedules. They're pretty good, like they know how I work, so they know that there's the deadline and then there's the real deadline.
Right,
um,
right.
but
So
with my own stuff, I very much just I will write very quickly within a week, and then have nothing for quite a while.
so do you dictate or do you manly type? Manually type.
Manually type, yeah.
manly
Wow.
type.
Manly typing,
Manly.
yes. R.
I womanly type.
You womanly type. Now, are you following like detailed plots or is it just by the seat of your
No.
pants?
I write a very brief kind of skeleton outline for my stuff, which is usually
Mhm.
about a page. And the most detail I go into is actually color coding where the sex scenes have to go to make sure that they're all spaced out enough. That's and who's, because it's reverse harem, who's having sex with who to make sure nobody's left out.
Well, we
Do
don't want
they?
to be left out. I mean, come on,
Can I ask a question? Do they have sex with each other at the same time in reverse harem? Or is it
Yeah,
just
yeah.
okay?
Oh, yeah. That's part of it. The readers are waiting for the group scene. So you've
Oh, I
got,
see. That's a
but
payoff
there's,
scene.
there's 5 people in the harem, and it's a series. So you kind of got to work up to it. So it'll be like, well, those three, and then it's very complicated, James. There's a lot of choreography involved.
I
Um,
once did stand up. I only did it once at the Comedy Club in London, and my routine was about a guy phoning a sex line and it being a group sex scene and him arguing with the other person about where they were around the woman because it was obviously
See, you
it was
joke.
getting confusing. And then he worked out the other guy was his dad. So and then they both worked
Oh,
Oh,
then
ew,
they
oh,
worked out it was their mum. So
ew.
it took a dark
That's,
oh,
turn.
that,
James, that
yeah.
just
What
took a
kind of club were
turn.
you in, James? Oh my
I was in the
gosh.
sort of comedy club where if you don't do stuff like that, you don't get remembered by
I'm
anybody.
not
So
sure
you
that was a
Oh,
comedy club.
remind me to stay away from there if I'm going to England. Okay. So,
But the choreography is
it was
difficult.
routine.
I've had to use my son's like action figures before, like Thor, Hulk,
whoa,
and
hey
Barbie,
now.
to like to figure it
Mummy,
out.
what are you
Oh,
doing?
what are you doing?
Not with him present.
Don't worry
Anyway,
about
the
it.
question about outlining, the serious question that I was answering, I start with a very brief, like 1 page outline, and then by about 10,000 words in, it's thrown out the window, and then I'm just making it up.
Okay. So Barbie and Ken. Just thinking, oh, hello,
I'm
Clark.
sure Barbie and Ken have been brought together on many occasions.
I would hope, yes, I would
There's
think
some fan
so.
fiction that must
Yeah,
exist out there somewhere.
yeah, of
All
course.
right. So do you use Scrivener or any other type of software to accomplish all
You
this, or
know
are you
what?
just
I
in Word?
found, oh, what was it called? First
Atticus.
Draft Pro. No, it's a new piece of cloud-based software that I found recently, which I absolutely loved it. I loved the aesthetic of it. I loved the fact you could color code scenes. I'm pretty sure it's called First Draft Pro, but I'll look it up and make sure and let you
Okay.
know.
I'm looking it up now.
Um, but the but is that I've contacted them to say, I love this, but you need to fix the bugs, because once you get past 50K, it won't save. You keep
Oh,
getting the
that's
little
not good.
beach ball of
Yikes.
death. And I was on a deadline. So
Oh boy.
I'm getting, yeah, and I got to 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was like the dog ate my homework. And I was like, no, really, like the beach ball's going, I can't save it.
Oh,
Well, you
Um,
sure you're not on the free plan or something where it's
no, no,
only
no,
allows
no,
1,000 words? It
no,
wow.
looks
Yeah,
no. I
it,
pay.
that's a
I
big
pay for it.
glitch. That's a big glitch.
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's when it gets above 50K, it's just almost like it can't handle it. But in terms of the thing that I've enjoyed writing in the most, that I found it fantastic. So I've actually emailed them to say I really love it, but at the moment I can't use it because I can't
No.
have that like getting to 50K and then it also slowed down. You know, when you're typing and it kind of like the words take a while to then appear on the
Yes.
screen. So I just use Pages apart from when I'm
Oh,
kind of on
wow.
hold using that. I just type in Pages. I don't
Yeah.
use any other
My
software.
last book I used Atticus.
Oh yeah.
I have tried Atticus. I didn't like it that much, but I think that
Okay.
was because I like having my formatting separate from my writing, and I was trying to use
Mm,
it to do both.
okay.
Um, and I like kind of writing in one thing and then putting it in another thing to format.
I
So I
think
haven't tried it just for writing.
the breakthrough with Atticus will come when they have the functionality that the book coach can log in
Yes.
at the same time
Yes.
you're writing, the editor can run. So, I mean, I think it's the bit we all hate is exporting to a Word file, reformatting it because the
Exactly. You're
editor wants it
eventually
in.
going there. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And once
Yeah.
Eventually.
it's in Word, it's so unwieldy. But
Yes. But for whatever reason, Atticus worked really slick for me.
hmm,
Cheers to Dave Chesson. Yeah,
yeah.
he's always coming up with something amazing. Uh, all right. Well, let's talk about Indie Writers Club. How did that start?
So we were
In a,
drunk in the pub.
yeah.
I love stories like that. That only good things can happen, right? It starts out with, well, I was in the pub and
Well, so technically, I suppose it started. We not not last year, the year before. Craig Martell did his train journey around the
Mhm.
UK, where he came to different cities, and I organised the Cambridge stop. And so me and James and a bunch of other writers in Cambridge met, and we just got on so well and formed this group, this amazing little group that kept meeting, and we met kind of every month, every other month since then. And so we became really close. And then at one of these meetings in the pub, James mentioned that he was going to start his own podcast, and I sort of drunkenly went, "Well, if you want a co-host." Uh, and then James can explain why he said yes.
Do you know what? It's one of those things I immediately knew it would be the right decision that you and I doing a podcast together. I immediately knew it would work.
Well, I'm
And
gonna say
actually,
you guys have great chemistry on air. You really do.
I can't believe how quickly you've progressed. I think you had a slightly nervous start on we did a clever thing, which did some cold recordings that never saw the light of day, just to sort of what they'd call chemistry tests in Hollywood.
Okay.
And I think you were a little bit nervy, then slightly, and but so quickly have relaxed into this conversational, the two of us riffing, and we both look forward to it, right? I think you
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
could not record the podcast or issue it. We'd probably still meet at least
Yeah,
once a
I mean,
week
well,
and just spend
sometimes
an
we
hour.
start chatting and then realize that
And
we're
then we have
chatting
to, we
too
should
much and we
record
need to
this.
press
Yeah.
record.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing
Um,
about it is it's kind of a solitary life that we lead. There isn't
yeah,
like in my friend group, nobody else does what I do. Yeah, I've got a
Mm.
podcast, I
Yeah.
write books, etc. And they look at you like you're speaking Martian. When you
Yeah.
start talking,
yeah,
yeah, and it's just nice to be with that's the that's the best part about going to writers conferences is being with other people that actually understand what you're going through. You were talking about, binge writing, Kara. I'm the
yeah.
same exact way. I'm like, oh shit, I got to get this done. And it's like, and I'm
Yes.
dyslexic. I'm the worst writer in the world. It takes me forever. But it's like, okay, I have to sit down and I just have to pound this out. I cannot dilly-dally anymore. It just has to get done. But just saying these kinds of things, people are looking at you like, what are you talking about? Or
Yeah.
whatever. Or you let alone like marketing or anything like that. And they just look at you like you have a cyclops eye between your two regular eyes. It just
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's
Yeah. And it
great.
is that's the feeling that we really wanted it to have was that the feeling that you get when you're in the pub with your writer friends or you're at a
Yep.
conference and you're doing the bits where you're sitting in the foyer drinking a coffee in between the sessions and
Yep.
you meet people and you hear ideas and you hear things that make you feel like you're not alone. And that's been the nicest feedback that we've had, especially from the Discord channel. People saying it feels like we're listening to our friends in a coffee shop. It feels like we're part of the conversation. It's so nice that, those kind of comments have been fantastic to hear because that's what
So
we were
why do this
aiming for.
podcast? Why do it?
I think for me, like, why wouldn't I want to do a podcast with James Blatch? Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, when I was interviewed on by James, must have been what, 5 years ago. And yeah, I remember when I was interviewed and I was like shaking before we recorded the interview, because I used to hate that sort of stuff. Um, and it's always just been, like, being interviewed was a big enough goal. So being able to actually host a podcast in this space, which I love, was just like, yeah, absolutely no brainer for me.
Yeah, for me, I think it was just a good idea to try and have a very relaxed, chatty podcast that recreated the benefits of being in a WhatsApp group. So I adore the little WhatsApp group I'm in with 4 or 5 other writers. We're in there every day. Most of it's not about writing, but it's a little friendship group. But we do talk
Yeah.
about writing when stuff blows up. And I wanted a podcast to feel like a WhatsApp group that you're a part of,
Okay.
to try and get through that over that sort of solitary lifestyle that
Yes.
so many writers do lead. So it was nothing really more than it being, I think, a good idea, and let's make it happen. And I've said to Cara, let's just do this at least for a year. Just do it without any ulterior motive, no product stuff shilling off the back of it. Just do it and build an audience, build a community, and see if we enjoy it. And so
And I
far,
think
so
for
good.
both of us, it's helping our writing as well. It's helping us with our accountability. It's helping us feel motivated again. And like, I remember when I started and I used to listen to all the podcasts every week, and you kind of get to a point where, you've written a lot of books now, and you've been in the kind of industry a while, and you lose a bit of that spark. But going back to talking about that stuff, talking about craft as well, because we're not just talking about marketing and stuff, we're talking about the craft of writing, which sometimes gets overlooked when you're an
Right.
indie. It's been really good. It's made me start thinking about my own writing again in a way that I haven't done in a long time. And I think we both said as well, a lot of the podcasts have been around a long time now, but there are still a lot of people coming into indie publishing completely new. They know nothing. They're just getting started. And we who've been here a while kind of forget that. And a lot of the
Mm.
podcasts have become quite advanced, and they're talking about quite advanced topics. So we're trying to take it back to basics a little bit, and talk about things like what your cover should look like, how you write a blurb, like where you start your mailing list if you've got nowhere to start. And all that is a good refresher for us as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what your target audience is for this podcast. Beginners, intermediate, advanced, a little bit of all. What are you looking at?
Yeah, definitely. We don't want to exclude anybody, and I think somebody who's very experienced and is probably not tuning in to learn from us, but just to
Yeah.
enjoy the podcast. That
That's what I
absolutely is
do.
there for
Yeah,
them.
and not
Yeah,
and I always pick something up. I mean,
yeah,
it's not going to be like a whole bunch. I've been doing this for a while. I'm no expert, that's for sure, but I know a little more than the average bear, and it's nice to, every now and then is like to be gently reminded. It's like, oh yeah, that does make sense.
yeah. But
Yeah,
it
so I
is.
think the people who are more advanced are going to be taking more of the conversational element from it, and kind of feeling like, enjoying the banter and that sort of stuff, but
Oh
might get
yeah.
the odd thing where you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that for a while, or that's reminded me I need to really look into those translations or whatever. Whereas the new people coming in are hopefully actually taking some really, like, actionable steps and things that are going to help them with what they're
Yeah,
doing.
that's definitely in the main audience. We want to remain a place that in your first year of indie publishing, this is a valuable place to come and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I once heard the definition of a podcast just in general. You're there to be educated, inspired, or entertained. I think you
Hmm.
guys do all three
Yes.
now, don't you?
What was the old BBC motto? I should know because I used to work for them. It's
You
educate,
should know.
inform, and entertain. I think educate,
Oh, it is
inform, and
okay.
entertain. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what you guys are doing. So absolutely. Now the Discord channel. Can you
Mm.
Hmm.
explain that?
I have no idea how it works. I mean, I do go on
I
it and
mean,
I'm there.
yeah, I don't think either of us really know how it works. It's essentially,
It must have been your
Facebook
idea.
groups became, I think it was all the good ideas are my idea,
Yeah,
of course.
obviously.
So I think, like, Facebook groups have become a little bit hard to actually reach people. You can
Mm,
post in a Facebook group these days, and even the bigger groups, conversations get lost and things get lost. And
they do.
Discord is just one of those things that's becoming an easier place for people to interact. It's essentially a forum. That's all it is.
Okay.
And
How
there's
many people
different
are in there
channels.
now?
So
About 300, 400?
yeah, I think we're almost up to 300 now, something like that. maybe 270.
Yes, I haven't looked recently, but
But it's a
yes, it's
very
pretty.
active, it is very
Yes.
active, and we've got different channels within the server. So there's one where people can suggest topics to us, like tell us things they want to cover, feedback on the episodes that we've done. There's a channel for newbie authors asking new questions. I think we're going to add on our list is a cover, your kind of book package feedback channel for people who'd like some feedback on their blurb cover, that sort of thing. And we're going to start a NaNoWriMo channel this week for people
Oh,
who are
very
taking
good.
part in that. But probably the most notable one there is our word count channel, which
Yes.
is where
Oh, yes.
everyone's sharing their goals and how they're doing. And that has been incredible. Like
Yes, I've taken a
the
peek
way that's
inside
helping
there.
people.
Yeah, I've taken
Yeah.
a peek, and there's quite a bit of activity in there. That's really cool. Now, in the future, are you guys looking at interviewing anybody, or are you just gonna remain the two of you?
So
I
my
think if we have someone on, it'll be in a casual way,
yeah,
not
Okay.
a formal interview.
it'll be like this actually, Patrick. I like this
Yeah.
style. It's somebody joining for a chat rather than and now James is going to interview them type thing.
Right.
So that it'll be the right type of guest, someone who can just riff with us and be a part of the conversation for 45 minutes rather than an interview. But yeah, I don't know when or where we'll have the first person on. People
I
like
think
the
we just got to
format.
wait for the inspiration to come to us,
Yeah,
I think. But we don't want to have someone on just because they've got a book out or just because
Sure.
they're
no.
selling a new course. We want to have someone on who can add to that particular discussion,
Well, the
Gosh,
thing
and
of
for it
the
to
thing about it
be
is you can
fun.
have somebody that's very, this is something that I've learned along the way. You can have somebody that's very successful in whatever they're doing, but that doesn't mean they're going to be a good guest.
no,
They
Yes.
may be a
completely.
Yeah.
little like nervous or whatever. I mean, I have a good friend of mine. Him and somebody else that he works with had a podcast for work, and it was a very dry subject. It was about credit unions. I mean, there's a podcast about everything.
Hmm.
And he had a guy on there that has been a nomad. This guy has been living out of a suitcase for like 3 or 4 years. And his job is he goes across the globe and fixes credit unions that are in like trouble. So
Hmm.
he's like, well, it's going to be a slam dunk. This is going to be a great interview, right? This guy's living out of a suitcase and he's a family. He lives in, his home base is in India, but he hasn't been home in like 4 years or whatever the case may be. I mean, I'd want to pick this guy's brain.
Yeah.
And he started talking to him. It was the most boring interview. He was just dying. I was literally cringing. I was in my car. I'll never forget it. And, my poor buddy is like, this guy kept on answering with like, yes, no, yes,
Oh,
no. And I'm just like, I'm
Oh, no.
sorry. And he's asking open-ended questions. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you. So yeah, you got to have the right chemistry all day long.
Yeah.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think essentially it'll probably be somebody that we know or and have had a
Yeah.
drink with.
Yes.
There you go.
So that we know they're gonna be
There you go.
they're
I
gonna
think
be
that
able to join in.
the highest compliment I ever get for this podcast from my guests is it just felt like we were in a pub or a coffee shop just
Yeah.
having a
Yeah,
drink.
it does, definitely.
And they
Well,
Definitely.
forget that we're recording it.
our next pub night, we could record an episode of the podcast there.
There you
I think we
go.
should. I really think we
You
should do that.
you have to read my sex scene at some point as well. We could do that on air.
I am going to read your sex scene. Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
going to
think read it
read. James
out
has a deleted sex scene
Oh Lord.
that takes place in the Cock Inn.
in the cock in, yeah.
Oh
Of
God.
course.
Of course it does. Yes.
Yeah.
So the podcast, is it growing quicker than you expected?
I don't know what my expectations
I
were, but
had
we
no
no
expectations. I'm just pleased anyone's listening.
we passed 5,000 downloads last week since we started,
Okay.
and the more interested in making sure it keeps moving in the right direction, which it does. And I can see episodes 1 and 2 now spiking because people tune in and then they go back,
Yeah,
and that's a sign that it's growing. So
absolutely.
I'm not setting expectations. I don't like targets. Definitely don't want to put any more pressure on me that I've got on me from other places at the moment
Right.
anyway. So we're just going to do it. And I said right from the beginning, and Cara completely agrees with this, is that it's a long, we're here for the long haul. We're just going to do it for us and
Yeah.
see what happens. And in fact, we had this conversation today we went through the written word media author survey, which one thing stood out from that is that if you just carry on doing something, almost by default, you become successful because a huge amount of people fall away in any industry, no matter what it is. Whereas,
Right.
I want to be a policeman. So how many people want to be policemen? But how many people actually fill the application form? And you're already down to a smaller group. How many people follow that through with the interview? How many people train for the interview and train for the process to get in? By the time you get to selection, it's not the luck you think that's at play here. It's that you carried on going, you were tenacious and you got there. So I think we're going to do that with the podcast. We're going to force success by still being around in a year's
We're
time.
going to force people to listen to
Yes.
us.
Well, the way I see it, if I were in your shoes, and it's a little bit the same with me, I'll stop doing it when it's not fun anymore.
I think
Yes.
that's it. If we were genuinely, like I think, like you said, if we weren't get doing it anymore, I'd be really sad because it's actually I'm looking forward to doing it every
Yeah.
week and we're having fun doing it. So while we're doing that, then we keep doing it and we're getting people, even if it's that just those 270 people in the Discord channel who are saying that it's really helping them and they're loving it. Like that's 270 people.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's fantastic. So yeah,
It's our
I think
therapy, isn't it?
it actually is. And James has to have his moan of the week.
Yeah. I love a moan.
Jill's going to have to listen to it if we don't.
Yeah.
So, my favorite.
She doesn't want the podcast to stop because I've got my
No.
moan out of the way.
So my favorite episodes are the ones dealing with why your books are not selling. I really like that. You were talking about book covers, blurbs, and the book themselves. Can you give us just a couple nuggets about that?
It
Well, so
was
there's
the
this block of cheese.
The
it
Swiss
does
cheese.
start and
Yes, the
end.
Swiss cheese.
Starts and end with a block of cheese, the Swiss cheese model. So
Yes.
yes,
Talk to us about the Swiss cheese model.
so I'm really in the woods with this at the moment. In the weeds, in the woods, in the weeds, in the weeds. That's where I am
The
with this
weeds
at the
in the woods.
moment. Yeah, the
There's
weeds in the
weeds in the woods.
woods. Because of Vinci books, yeah, a lot of submissions, a lot of books that we're taking on, and it becomes very apparent when you go through that number of submissions that some books have fundamental errors in them, fundamental problems that mean that the reader journey from that first Facebook ad where they take in the title, the description, the line of copy, the image, the cover, when they take that in, if things aren't absolutely as aligned as they possibly can be with the genre that you're writing in, you lose some audience. And the more unaligned they are, the bigger parts of the audience you lose. So if you come up with a title that really does not say romance on it, it sounds slightly sinister, you lose huge chunks of your audience at that point straight away. Now that title might be clever, it might mean something to you because you know what it means inside the book, and it might be brilliant once someone's read the book and looks back after, oh, that was quite a clever title. But if it's not immediately saying to people this is a contemporary romance book and that's what they're looking for, forget about it. So the same thing with thrillers. And it was that sort of frictionless journey from glancing at an ad, keeping the percentage as high as possible. People are going to get all the way through to the product page, the right people all the way through to the product page, by which point you're in a strong position to buy. And it's unfortunately, it's quite common that things are wrong on that process for a lot of authors, particularly at the beginning of their career. So it's become a bit of a pet subject of mine. And I actually did a live webinar on the subject a couple of weeks ago, or last week, and I'm going to present in Vegas on this same subject in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, it's so fundamental. There's no point in running Facebook ads to a book that has these kind of systemic problems at the beginning. So
Yeah,
getting that right is really key.
you were talking about cover too, and I, I'm a big fan of Kalytics.
Mm.
Yeah.
And the great thing about Kalytics is my latest release is Vigilante Justice. So he did a special just on Vigilante Justice. It was just really good timing. And I'm looking at book covers, and it was the top 100, but he took the time to filter out all the romance books, because the
Yeah.
romance books will always find their way into all these top 100s.
Yeah.
Somehow, some
Yeah.
way they're always in there. Then he had it down to color, font. I mean, he went way deep into the woods or weeds, or maybe
Yeah.
both.
In the
So
woods.
what's your
Looking at the woods.
take on that, on
I mean,
covers?
Yeah.
I
I mean,
love Kalytics. Like
yeah.
the year that I think I was in the last Paranormal Romance Kalytics report, my cover was in it, and I
Ooh,
lost my mind. I was
that,
like,
Yeah.
"Oh
that's so
my God,"
awesome.
because because symbol-based covers were on the up, and it was the same thing. It was that kind of that page where it shows what's increasing and exactly the same, fonts, all of that kind of stuff. And I love the Calytics reports. And I think I said on the last episode, my trick when I'm trying to decide if a cover is right or not is that I copy and paste it and I stick it on top of the Amazon top 10, top 20
Mm,
of the genre that I'm trying to rank in. Because it gives you a really instant visual, like, yes, that fits, or oh, no, that's off. What is it about my cover that's standing out? And it's that thing of you don't want to stand out. Like, and it seems completely counterintuitive when you're just starting. You like when you're starting out, you think, but I need my cover to be different from all the other thriller
right.
Mm.
covers.
And you're so
And it's
proud of
like,
it.
no,
You're so
yeah,
proud, you're so happy, and you're like, hey, I've got this really unique, blah, 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 that means this to me. But all three of us would look at it and go, huh?
Yeah.
What? We don't get it. Yeah.
And I can remember a guy saying, more than one person saying, a few years ago when the thriller cover of the guy walking away from frame, sort of surrounded
Right.
in a desolate area, whatever, when everybody was doing that and they still are doing it, I remember this guy saying, I will never have that cover on my thrillers. But guess what the new Lee Child cover is? It's exactly in it. And this is Lee Child, right? This is one of the it is, I think, the biggest selling author on the planet when he releases his books, published by a company that know exactly what they're doing. And if Lee Child's doing that, I reckon you probably do that. So it's yeah, fitting in, not standing out is another big theme of that.
yeah. And it's like if you want to have a version of your book with your cover that you designed and you love and you think is super special, just like use a print on demand service, like use Book Vault, use somewhere, make yourself that special edition that you can keep at home and it's got your pretty
Yeah,
cover on it that you love. And you can do the hardback and you can, keep that for you and your family members or whoever. But the one that you're selling commercially needs to actually be a cover that's going to sell your book.
that
Yeah.
makes total sense to me. Now, one last thing to talk about blurbs. What's your take
Mm.
on that, James? Common
I think
mistakes you
I've got
see.
to go actually. I
Okay.
don't. I
Yeah, everyone hates blurbs, don't they? So my big take on, first of all, I think AI is incredibly helpful with blurbs. I think if
Yep.
you write a very rough blurb, stick it into Claude or your AI of preference, it'll be like having a conversation with somebody, and they'll start to use some turns of phrase, start to put things in order that'll inspire you to write a better blurb. So I would definitely advocate using AIs to help you write your blurb. Your blurb is another opportunity to reinforce the genre. Not an opportunity, it's essential that your blurb reinforces the genre. Its main job is to tell somebody that this is the type of book that they're looking for. So if you're writing a reverse harem book, your blurb needs to spell that out, which actually is slightly tricky with reverse harem and the
Yeah, you're not actually allowed to say
no,
reverse harem because then Amazon's going to put you in the erotica dungeon. But you have to
yes.
Oh, okay.
imply, you have to heavily imply that they
Oh,
that it's
okay.
reverse harem.
Okay, like
And
mine is,
if
vigilante justice, and I've got, all kinds
you've got
of good stuff with that.
yeah, you've got to say, I mean, you've got to say it's vigilante justice
Yep.
and you've got to use those keywords throughout. So that's more important than your blurb being brilliant at setting the scene. And because people expect a thriller book to have those tropes in it, they expect it to have a ticking bomb at the end and to
Right.
be tense and all the rest of it. So you kind of don't need to over labor that. I think some people do that to us. What you need to say is this is the type of book you read. You've just been through all the Tom Clancy books in my case. This is like a Tom Clancy book, and you basically could almost say that. So your blurb again is just reinforcing that. Standing in front of a cinema, looking at the posters, rom-com, thriller. They don't muck about Hollywood. They don't. They're not subtle with their posters. They are.
Right.
This is with every aspect of this photograph and this title and this font and this color is going to tell you what type of film this is. That's what you need to be doing with every aspect, including the blurb.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
were
and I
talking
think
about
with
I
AI as well, with the blurbs, what I've done, if you're not sure what the keywords and the tropes are that you're supposed to be going for, I have copied blurbs in from the best-selling authors in my genre, and I'm not copying them. I'm saying to the AI, "Can you tell me what
Sure.
common themes are used in these blurbs? What are the common words that they use?" And then you'll get a list of things that you can obviously skillfully don't just jam pack don't keyword stuff your
stuff.
blurb,
Yeah.
but then you can, if you struggle, if you've not got that kind of analytical brain and you struggle to see commonalities between things, that's another thing that AI can help you with for when you're writing your own blurb.
What do you think about using specific books as, like, hey, if you're a fan of John Wick, The Equalizer, and Death Wish, you're gonna love,
I do
blah blah
that.
blah.
I do that all the time.
Absolutely.
I say if you're a
Okay.
fan
Yeah.
of this author, or I think in romance, a lot of the time we're so plot, so trope driven. And Lucy Score talked about this at the last self-publishing show conference, where it's almost like micro tropes as well. So
Yeah.
in romance, it tends to not necessarily be the author, but we'll say, if you love grumpy sunshine trope, if you love the golden retriever boyfriend,
Mm.
if you love those kind of things, and really spell them out so people know what they're getting. So we tend to do that because different romance authors can, write along different lines and different tropes. So we tend to do
So
that.
in the blurb, the very last line I usually put in like pick up your copy today, or hit the buy button. What do you think about the value of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I mean, Brian, who's a very good blurb writer, Brian Cohen, he
Yes.
always advocated that sort of really clear call to action at the end. I don't know. My instinct is I don't think it particularly matters or works. I don't think it does you a disservice.
I do that more in
People,
my Facebook ads. In my Facebook ads, I tend
yes,
to be
Okay.
like, start binging today, or start your
Yeah,
journey
yeah.
today, or whatever.
I
Um,
think people have to at least feel that they've made the decision to buy. So I
Mhm.
think it potentially might even be a bit counterintuitive if you're kind of ordering them to get the book now. But everything else I'm a big fan of, and I
but
need
we were
I need to
talking
rewrite
about
my blurbs because I've thought about this quite a lot, and I need to have Tom Clancy and Michael Crichton in my last sentence. It's not bad for keyword search terms as well on Amazon.
Yeah. And we
Sorry,
were talking
go on.
about this earlier and saying that, because I said, you need to research. And we were talking about, and pretty much every answer I said was, you need to research, because within your genre, there are different expectations. So within
Right.
romance, we might list the tropes last. Within the thriller genre, there's going to be slightly different conventions for each one. So if you're not
Mm.
sure whether you should put download my book now at the end of your blurb, go and look and see how many other authors are doing it. And if there's a bunch of other authors in your genre doing it, then that's what you should be doing. If they're successful, obviously, if they're the successful
Yeah.
ones who are selling books.
Very good. I have one Facebook question real quick as we wind down. Denise Johnson asks, sounds like great topics. My question is, do you have specific tips for debut self-published authors? Maybe
In
one or
terms of
two.
Facebook ads.
No, just my
No, that
specific
question
tips
came off
for
Facebook.
debut
Oh,
self-published authors. Very general question.
Wow. I think
listen to a lot of podcasts.
yes. Yeah, I think what we've been talking about, those episodes 7 and 8 of our podcast, I hope will stand the test of the two episodes you were talking about the book package. I think they should stand the test of time. In 5 years' time, they should still be relevant because it's kind of the eternal issues we need to be aware of. So that package, I think expectations are important as well. The
Mm,
economic model. I always talk about startup businesses. There used to be this model that year one you'd lose money. It's like investment year and building customer base. Year two you might break even. Year three you should be into profit. I think we can think roughly the same about books.
Yeah,
Your first book is
yep.
probably a loss leader. So don't be the majority of people probably who don't listen to these podcasts, but simply write a book, see it doesn't really take off and become a number one bestseller, and then never do another book. You're much better having your eyes open from the beginning, thinking this is the beginning of a process. And this book will be the foundational book. It's not going to make me money, but it's good for me to even spend ads money on it to get audience and get people interested in me and knowing my name. Book two will build on that. Book three could start to be profitable. So that's probably that expectation management is quite an important thing at the beginning of your career.
but you learn
Yeah, and I
so
think
much
looking at
about.
success stories, sorry, Patrick,
No, I
looking
was
at
just going to
success
say,
stories and like being inspired by them, but not expecting to emulate that person's success with your
right.
first run out the gate, like with your
Yeah.
first book, because that's when a lot of people fall away because they feel like they failed before they've even started because they were expecting to be that next TikTok sensation. And those are actually the minority. And most of us have been at this for quite a long time, and we've been really sticking at it for quite a long time.
You're an overnight success, 20 years in the making.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly that. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
One overwhelming theme that I've got from listening to podcasts and interviewing a bunch of people is there's a lot of hard work there, man.
Mhm.
There's whole lot of hard work. It just doesn't. There's no magic pill. There's no poof. Hey, look at me. I'm super popular right now. I'm making all kinds of money. It's like, no, there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into any kind of moniker of success. So you have to keep that in mind. And my first couple of books, they were learning experiences, just going
Mhm.
Mhm.
through the paces, making the dumb mistakes, and just, hey, you know what? And if you're really scared of it, write it under a pen name
Yes. Yep.
Be
Absolutely.
anonymous.
I have a lot of pen names.
Yeah, so do I actually. Yeah, it's just like, okay, this ain't so bad. So
Yeah.
let's wrap this up here. What's next for the both of you guys for the podcast
James
and your
needs to
writing?
actually write something. Well, we're both going to
Yes.
try and do NaNoWriMo in our own way. So
Okay.
I've got a novel that I need to write in November, my next Mafia Vampire novel. And I think James is going to attempt a half NaNoWriMo, just to kind of stay on track writing
Yes. I'm
wise.
going to 50% NaNoWriMo, going to Author Nation, so I'll be in Vegas. You going to be there, Patrick?
Not this year. I went to Killer Nashville. I was
Oh, yeah.
The way I'm looking at it is I'm going to try and go to conferences that are a little more specific to the genre that I'm writing in right now. So we'll
Was
see.
that useful, Killer Nashville?
It was good, but the best part was seeing old friends. Yeah,
Hmm.
Rich Rybecki, he's publishing with you right
Yes.
now. I
Yeah.
hung out with him quite a bit. Jody and Chris Burnett, uh,
Love Jody
Honore
and Chris.
Quarter. I saw those guys every day, and it was so much fun. Abs
Chris and I hung out here twice actually this summer, and he got because he's an airline pilot. He flies to London, and he has like 24 hours here. So he came up to Huntingdon, watched some cricket. I showed him some cricket. We had a beer. It was great.
that's
Not
outstanding.
outside the 12 hours. He had a
But
beer.
that's the best part of going to these conferences, I think, is just
Yeah.
connecting with old friends. It was so
Yeah.
much fun.
Well, I'm hoping there will be some friends at Author Nation this year because I mean, first of all, I really want to support Joe and Suze. I think
Mhm.
they've worked incredibly hard. I think they're kind of put their own stamp and shape on it, despite the fact they've inherited quite a lot of the machinations from before,
Right.
or the framework from before. But I want it to be successful. I want it to be a foundation for future years. It's important we have a single big conference every year somewhere in the world, and Vegas is one of the most connected. Whatever you think of Vegas, one of the most connected cities in the world.
Absolutely.
So it's a good place for it. So I want it to work, and I know, Ricardo's going to be there, and Dan Wood, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with those guys.
Sure.
But so it'd be nice to have a few more friendly faces.
Absolutely. Now, Cara, where can people go to find out more about you and your books?
So my website is caraclaire.com, and I'm just Cara Clare author on all the socials. So mainly TikTok and Instagram is where you'll find me.
James, where do they go to find you? To hunt you
Yeah,
down,
so yeah,
to
hunt me down like a
hunt you
dog
down like a
in the
dirty
woods.
dog.
Well, they know where I am in the woods, looking at the weeds.
Yes.
Well, look, my books are on Amazon, so James Blatch, you can just search for them there. And learnselfpublishing.com is the home of our online education, our courses, so you can check them out. And
indiewritersclub.com.
indiewritersclub.com. Yeah, so basically, if you search, I mean, I have to say the search function, you put something on Amazon, I can put an author name into Amazon, it doesn't come up with their book sometimes, which is really frustrating.
Right.
But Indie Writers Club on any of the podcast platforms, and I guess it's the same for yours. If you just
Yes.
put in that, it'll immediately come up with our page. So whether we're on all of them, so Spotify and Apple and YouTube and everything else. So yeah, just search Indie Writers Club. Come and hang out with us. Get on a treadmill on a Friday. It's a Friday morning. So we get to.
Yeah,
I didn't finish that thought this morning when we were recording. We get 2 Fridays a week, don't we?
we do. Yeah,
So we get the
Wow.
we
Friday we
do.
release the podcast, but we get to be Friday when we record it on a Tuesday or
Look at
Wednesday,
you.
Yeah, or a
Wow.
Wednesday, or whatever other day,
whatever the day
whatever
we
day of the week
record.
we can squeeze it in.
That's awesome. Well, it's been so much fun talking to the both of you. Cara, it's been great meeting you.
It was
You're a
great meeting you
delight.
too.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
James,
you.
always great to have you on the show. I think I've had you on 4 or 5 times, maybe.
Something like that. But it's been
Yeah,
brilliant. I'll come back another 4 or 5 times you're gonna have me. It's great,
absolutely.
Patrick. We want to thank you for everything you do for the community as well. And you run a fantastic service, particularly for people writing those sinister crime books. And if people don't know where you are, they definitely need to go and check out your Facebook group, which is brilliant.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Till next time.